It was a quiet evening in the small It was a quiet evening in the small Midwestern town of Brookhaven when Michael Hartley was last seen. Known by neighbors as a friendly but reserved man in his early 40s, Michael lived alone in a modest two-story house at the edge of town. He worked at the local hardware store, paid his bills on time, and rarely made waves. On the night of October 14th, 2019, Michael was seen leaving the Brookhaven Diner after a late dinner. Security cameras caught him walking toward his truck, keys in hand, wearing a light jacket despite the chill in the air. That was the last confirmed sighting. The next morning, Michael's truck was found parked neatly in his driveway, but Michael himself was nowhere to be found. The front door was locked. His wallet, phone, and keys were inside, resting on the kitchen counter. There were no signs of forced entry. The initial police investigation turned up very little. Friends and coworkers describe Michael as a creature of habit. He didn't travel, didn't party, and had no known enemies. The only odd detail was that, in the week before his disappearance, a neighbor saw a dark-colored sedan parked across from Michael's home several nights in a row. The driver was never identified. Police canvassed the neighborhood, but no one else had noticed the car, or if they had, they weren't willing to talk. 2 weeks later, Michael's sister, Andrea, came forward with something unusual. She had been cleaning his house with police permission when she found a locked wooden box hidden behind a false panel in his bedroom closet. Inside was a bundle of letters dating back over 20 years, all addressed to Michael but signed only with the initials D.S. The tone of the letters shifted over time, from friendly to affectionate, then to bitter and almost threatening. The last letter, dated just 3 months before his disappearance, read, "You can't keep ignoring me. You know what you owe." Andrea swore she had never heard of anyone with those initials, and Michael had never mentioned them. Detectives traced the postmarks to various towns across 3 states, but they all had one thing in common. They were near places where a man named David Sloan had lived and worked. Sloan was a drifter with a criminal record for fraud, assault, and a string of restraining orders from former partners. He had disappeared from public records in 2015. The letters were enough for police to dig deeper, and soon they found that Michael and Sloan had once been roommates in college. There was a falling out, possibly over money, though the details were vague. By mid-November, investigators received their first major break. A farmer 30 miles outside Brookhaven reported finding a torn piece of fabric caught on a barbed wire fence bordering his property. The fabric matched the jacket Michael was wearing the night he vanished. Nearby, they found fresh tire tracks leading into a wooded area. A search team combed the woods and discovered a shallow fire pit containing partially burned papers and photographs, many of which appeared to be candid shots of Michael taken from a distance over the last year. Then came a chilling discovery. A single house key with Michael's fingerprints, but no other prints, was buried in the ash. Whoever burned the items had tried to erase something, perhaps proof of stalking, but had left enough behind to suggest this was no random disappearance. In early December, a local hunter stumbled upon an abandoned hunting cabin deep in the woods. Inside, police found a cot, canned food, and a map of Brookhaven with Michael's house circled in red ink. Several dates were marked along the edges, including the night he vanished. Fingerprints in the cabin matched David Sloan. The manhunt intensified. Sloan had a history of evading authorities, and his familiarity with rural areas gave him an advantage. But in January 2020, a break came from an unexpected source. A motel clerk in a neighboring county recognized Sloan from a wanted poster. She reported that he had checked in under a false name 2 days earlier. When police arrived, Sloan was gone, leaving behind only a duffel bag filled with clothing, a prepaid cell phone, and a hunting knife with traces of dried blood. Forensics confirmed the blood belonged to Michael Hartley. Still, there was no body, and prosecutors hesitated to bring formal murder charges without it. The community grew tense. Some believed Michael might still be alive, perhaps held somewhere by Sloan. Others felt certain he'd been killed, and the body was hidden somewhere in the dense forests surrounding Brookhaven. In March 2020, hikers found human remains in a remote ravine 40 miles from town. Dental records confirmed it was Michael. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Near the remains, investigators found duct tape, zip ties, and a broken flashlight, all bearing Sloan's fingerprints. The case against him was now overwhelming. David Sloan was arrested in April after a high-speed chase that ended in a ditch along a rural highway. In his possession were several fake IDs, thousands in cash, and a journal detailing his movements over the past year. Chillingly, the journal included entries about watching Michael and finishing what was started years ago. The motive appeared to be a long-held grudge over a failed business venture during their college days, combined with Sloan's escalating instability. At trial, Sloan showed no remorse. He claimed the evidence was circumstantial and that someone else had framed him. But the jury didn't believe him. In September 2021, he was found guilty of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and unlawful confinement, and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. For Brookhaven, the case became a grim reminder that danger can lurk for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Michael Hartley had been an ordinary man living an ordinary life, but an old shadow from his past returned to claim him. The story of his disappearance left the town forever changed. A haunting tale of betrayal, obsession, and the dark corners of human nature that no one truly sees until it's too late. After David Sloan's sentencing, Brookhaven tried to move forward, but the scars ran deep. Michael's modest house on the edge of town sat empty for months, a "for sale" sign swaying in the wind. Neighbors avoided walking past it at night, saying the sight of the darkened windows gave them chills. Andrea Hartley, Michael's sister, inherited the property, but she couldn't bring herself to pack up his things. She said it still felt like he might walk through the door at any moment. Then came the anonymous letter. 2 months after Sloan was locked away, Andrea received a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, Michael, alive, sitting at a table in what looked like a small diner. His hair was longer, his face thinner, but there was no mistaking him. The timestamp in the corner read November 22nd, 2019. More than a month after his disappearance, and weeks before his remains were found. On the back of the photo were 3 words written in block letters: "Not the end." Police dismissed it as a cruel prank, possibly from someone following the trial. But Andrea noticed something the detectives missed. In the far corner of the photo, reflected in the diner's window, was a blurry figure standing outside. The posture and build matched Sloan. Theories began to swirl. Had Sloan not acted alone? Had someone else been watching Michael? Someone still out there? Detectives quietly reopened parts of the case, combing through the burned photographs found in the fire pit. One image, almost too damaged to see, appeared to show Michael talking to an unknown man in a grocery store parking lot just days before he vanished. This man was never identified. By the summer of 2022, strange things began happening in Brookhaven again. Residents reported seeing the same dark-colored sedan, or one eerily like it, idling in different parts of town. Once, it was spotted parked across from Andrea's house at 3 a.m. By the time police arrived, it was gone. Andrea moved away that autumn, leaving the house empty once more. Local kids began daring each other to break in, claiming they'd heard footsteps inside when no one was there. One teen swore he saw a man's silhouette in the upstairs window, just watching the street. The case file on Michael Hartley officially lists David Sloan as the sole perpetrator, but some of the detectives who worked it will quietly tell you otherwise, that pieces never fit, and that the photograph Andrea received still keeps them up at night. To this day, the identity of the man in the grocery store photo remains unknown. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between Brookhaven's streetlights, a dark sedan sometimes still appears, engine idling before disappearing into the night.